Good morning. So, finally get through this part 4, and a lot has occurred in the last 12, maybe 16 hours. Ongoing situations in the world, and a lot of sort of ambiguity, multiple definitions of the truth being peddled by the U.S. State Department and mainstream media news. Same old as far as catering to, I feel like, a society distracted by a kind of materialism that competes with mental health, basically. There's a lot of questing in America for proof of one's worth, and materialism is a kind of coping mechanism, at least at its base level. I mean, it's many things. I mean, a material thing can be a reinforcement for one's own placement in meaning and value of life, like supporting artifacts of sorts. And I think that this is valid. So it's a case-by-case situation. I'm not making necessarily like a wide brushstroke judgment of materialism, just that when you pan out and you consider that the people have the power, the actual power that they have yet to use to deconstruct a government that is based on profiteering and citizen exploitation, it seems that the dissonance, the hypocrisy of a supposed democracy that's actually a republic, a capitalistic republic led by Christian nationalism, which again is a contradiction unto itself. It goes to show you how much questing in the material world it can be. If it's either or, it's me first. I feel like that's, like, instinctually it kind of makes sense, because fear and self-survival are hardwired into us. And if you push against that and you ask people to risk persecution, exile, arrest, it's a lot. And yet, is that risk truly there? That's a chance that certain people will have to take eventually. And if enough people take that risk, then the risk will go away, because you can only arrest but so many people until the system collapses in on itself. There are not enough institutions to hold millions upon millions of resistant citizens. So there's a point that every prison can only hold but so many inmates. And if the inmates start to outnumber the statistical guard to inmate figure, things get a little sketchy. And so control has math behind it, and the people will always mathematically have the power, especially in a capitalist society where the top 1% owns more capital and assets than 80% of the combined household incomes. So there's definitely a shadow piece to be dismantled and coaxed out and made an example of something that is fundamentally broken and is being exploited and served to the world at large as the status quo and normal. And so we're going to get back into this video here a little bit. The last quote that I pinned down from part 3 is limited worldviews. And again, there's another judgment of, quote, ordinary people having limited worldviews. I would argue that the limited worldview is thinking that a limited worldview exists in the first place. I mean, I think it depends on the context of what you're talking about. I mean, if someone makes a judgment and you understand that they don't have enough information to truly make that judgment, then you might be able to put it in brackets and say, well, you have a limited worldview and this is why. And if they have an open mind and are willing to listen and absorb what you're giving and admit that they're wrong, then now their limited worldview is no longer so limited. But the way the narrator makes it sound like in this video is as if it's a done deal, like that people are static creations unto themselves. And I feel like there's a danger of becoming like an insular cult think that pushing to educate the public on mental health and psychology and inner world events, anger, depression, anxiety, paranoia, judgment, assumption, transference, projection, denial, deflection, compartmentalizing, jealousy, greed, narcissism, coping mechanisms, implicit memory triggers. The list goes on and on. But these are real phenomenons that are the causes of effects. And eventually the public will need to make a decision whether they're going to build a foundation within themselves, each, of course, building it in a different way based on their personality, their values, their faiths. But these are fundamental human potentials and rules or laws. I mean, if a Christian makes an assumption, it's no different than a Muslim making an assumption, because you're human. And so these are universal phenomenons, unaffected by the details, how they're expressed, or the decoration around them. They are unto themselves unchangeable. They're simply modes of being that you just simply cannot manipulate. They just happen. And there's a lot of coping mechanisms in the world that distract people from approaching these things and understanding them and being relatively in charge of how they operate, what happens when they're triggered, etc. And so here we go.
Jung made a startling prediction about rare personalities. As humanity evolves, more people will develop these traits. What's rare now will become more common as our species grows in psychological sophistication. But that means you're not just personally rare, you're evolutionarily important. You represent what Jung called the leading edge of human consciousness. You're pioneering ways of being that others will eventually follow. This perspective changes everything about how you see your struggles. Every time you felt like an outsider, you were actually scouting new territory for human potential. Every time you've been criticized for being too much, you were demonstrating possibilities that threaten limited worldviews. Every time you've chosen authenticity over acceptance, you've expanded what's possible for human relationship. Every time you've refused to settle for shallow meaning, you've raised the bar for what life can become. Jung understood that psychological evolution happens through individuals like you who refuse to accept current limitations as permanent. You're not just living your life, you're expanding what it means to be human. But this comes with loneliness. You're often walking paths that few others have walked. You're solving problems that most people don't even recognize as problems. You're seeking connections that most people don't believe are possible. Jung's final insight about rare personalities was both challenging and liberating. You must learn to love your rarity without needing others to understand it. The goal isn't to make everyone see how special you are. The goal is to embody your gift so fully that you become a living example of what's possible when someone embraces their authentic nature completely. This means accepting that some people will never understand your depth. Some will be threatened by your questions. Some will want to diminish your light because it makes them uncomfortable with their own dimness. But Jung discovered something beautiful about people who fully embrace their psychological rarity. They become magnets for others who are ready to embrace their own uniqueness. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need to find the few who can match your level of consciousness and build a life with them. The world needs your questions, your sensitivity, your refusal to accept limitations as permanent. But you must give these gifts consciously, strategically, sustainably. You must learn to be both powerful and protective, both open and discerning. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." You're learning to do exactly that, and in doing so, you're giving others permission to accept themselves completely too. Remember what Jung identified about extremely rare personalities? The 8 signs we've explored aren't just individual traits. They're evidence of what I call advanced psychological architecture. Jung wrote in his final works, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But for people like you, becoming who you truly are means accepting that you operate at a level of psychological sophistication that most people never develop. Your emotional depth isn't oversensitivity. It's emotional intelligence operating at advanced levels. Your constant questioning isn't negativity. It's consciousness refusing to accept limitations. Your independence isn't isolation. It's psychological sovereignty. Your hyper-perceptive awareness isn't paranoia. It's intuition functioning as intended. Your craving for meaning isn't impractical. It's your soul demanding alignment. Your pattern of outgrowing people isn't coldness. It's evolution in action. Your transformational presence isn't manipulation. It's authenticity, creating space for truth. Your undefined purpose isn't confusion. It's potential seeking expression. If even half of these signs resonated with you, you're not just different. You're part of what Jung believed was humanity's next evolutionary step. You're one of the people pushing our species toward greater awareness, deeper truth, and more authentic connection. Yes, it's lonely sometimes. Yes, it requires more courage than most people will ever need. But Jung believed that people like you are essential for humanity's psychological evolution. Your intensity isn't too much. It's exactly what the world needs to shake off its comfortable numbness. Your sensitivity isn't weakness. It's strength that can perceive what others miss. Your refusal to settle isn't difficult. It's necessary for progress. Carl Jung spent his life studying people like you because he understood something profound. You're not just living your own life. You're expanding what it means to be human. The world doesn't need you to be smaller, quieter, or more convenient. The world needs you to be exactly what you are, psychologically rare and proud of it. If you're ready to fully embrace your psychological rarity and stop apologizing for traits that make you extraordinary, comment below. I am evolutionary consciousness in human form. Share this with someone who needs to remember their own psychological rarity. And if you want to understand more about Jung's insights into the shadow side of sensitivity, check out my video on Final Warning to Empaths, They're Feeding on Your Light, where I reveal Jung's most disturbing discovery about how unconscious people drain the energy of psychologically advanced individuals. Subscribe because we're just beginning to explore the depths of what makes you extraordinary. Remember, you're not too much. The world is too little. And Jung knew that people like you are the ones who change that. Thank you for watching. See you in the next dimension.
Okay. Well, I want to first thank Surreal Mind for presenting this. It's been a journey, and I'm going to give I'm a pauser, as you probably know by now if you're keeping up with these different parts. So limited worldviews. Again, this is comparing and a wide brushstroke, which I feel is disingenuous to a more reasonable situation, and that would be that you cannot solve the mystery. There's billions of people on this planet, all operating within different programs, let's say, and this has been going on for tens of thousands of years, and individuals come and go as the mortal time clock dictates. And I'm not so sure that you can really gauge progress of human psychological or spiritual evolution by panning out and making a generalized estimate on the entire population of the world, or even a state or county. I think that this is a self-defeating method of gauging progress. The real progress is yourself, and I would just keep it at that. I think that you get into some gray water when you try to make a judgment outside of yourself in around a group of people, or however you do it to make that wide brushstroke and say, well, there's people have a limited worldview, or people don't recognize, and so it's stay in your lane. I mean, that's the gist of what I'm saying here, is just be careful that don't let the ego of becoming a sage of meaning make these hyperinflated presumptions that will limit you. I mean, it's a guaranteed limitation when you make meta statements like that, and you turn individuals into like a homogeneous monolith as if they're all the same. That's just the ego trying to simplify life in order to control it and judge it. So it's not to say that there isn't like mass hysteria and times where people lose their individualism and make a group decision or a group action. I think that is a situation where humanity itself as a phenomenon acts and does something for bigger reasons than just the individual. Because I mean, it's an abstract thing. We can function as individuals, and we can function as part of an organism in a moment to get something done that is outside of being an individual. So the few, again, this is just be careful of isolation and feeling like you're aloof and above it all, and that you can make fun or be cynical towards people who are earnestly either they are in a process that may be a kind of self-destructive process, but they deserve some percentage of compassion and patience. I mean, unless they're beating down your door and wanting to harm you in some way, then that's a completely different situation. And even then, it's not to say that they're making these decisions from a deep interpersonal place. They are, for lack of a better word, possessed by something that is connected to a personal trauma that they've made into a worldview or a judgment of you. And so they have a target in mind in order to not lose their mind, so to speak, in the sense of approaching their own closet full of skeletons. People will self-sacrifice their own mortal life before they open up that closet. So the implications are quite vast there. Jung said the most terrifying thing is accepting yourself completely. Well, I'd say the most terrifying thing is being genocided by another group of people, hunting you down, taking off the face of the planet your entire lineage in whatever generation you belong in. I think terror has layers, and I think I think we have to stay relative to the context of terror. I mean, it's one thing accepting yourself as you are in the moment. That may be terrifying for one privileged person who isn't under the threat of mortal extinction. But also another terrifying thing might be getting a triple bypass at the ripe age of 50 years old, when you've got 4 kids and a wife that depend on you. So keep it relative, keep it humble. Don't mythologize yourself beyond the Earth's atmosphere, where you become disconnected from relativity, and you're so self-possessed by your process of becoming a better version of yourself that you deny that same process different modes of being with other people. Just because your ritual looks different than everyone else's doesn't mean they're not deeply involved in a ritual of their own. I think that creation's a lot more complex and creative than one way. I feel like there are people who will go forwards just fine without Carl Jung and Freud and psychoanalytical philosophies and ideologies and processes. So and that goes for religions too. I think that there's a deeper mystery going on, in my opinion, where eventually whatever success looks like or feels like or is desired by an individual, if they truly desire it, it will happen. And this is in reference to the internal world, not like external proof of worth in the monetary sense. I'm dodging light beams from our burning star. I need to get some kind of controlled screen here, especially for early morning in California. Never develop. I mean, this is a huge assumption that people, again, are static and they never develop what your path is on about. Just stay humble, give people the benefit of the doubt that, again, we don't know what occurs in their private moments and what secrets they're keeping from others that only they understand and are working on. That whatever recipe book that you have is in large part based on chance and circumstance. It's not like you were born with Jungian psychology book embedded in your epidermis that was surgically removed and somehow brought out and given to you to read as soon as you could read. I mean, we cobble together our life experiences and the things that influence us, again, by happenstance and chance and just the way things happen. There is no plan. So to make that into like some sort of preordained or as if you've come from a hyper-intentional temple of training is a bit far-fetched. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that people who are on some sort of more individualistic path, unattached to maybe different responsibilities that other people have, there's things that those individuals don't ever achieve either, like being a father from day one to the day the child decides they're ready to leave and go out on their own. There's multitudes of experiences that a solo philosopher sort of solitary figure, the old man in the mountain, may know a lot about Plato's cave, but nothing about relationships, nothing about caretaking others. So for every reward, there's a lost opportunity. It's not to say that the reward isn't real. It's just to say that you can't have everything. Time is time, and you might have 3 PhDs, but you don't have 30. So there's always something else. And again, this idea of comfortable numbness, it's a judgment. I mean, I everyone rests, and all humans quest for comfort. I think that's natural. Numbness is a little bit of a cynical way of distinguishing your hyper attention and nervousness apart from what you assume are other people's numbness. Could that be a legitimate criticism of an individual in a particular moment, in a particular context, yes, that's a quality of denial or lying or apathy or even sociopathy. Sociopaths are, numbness is one of their nutrient drinks. So it's a case-by-case situation, and it's a mental health aspect, a mental health condition of numbness. It's dissociative uh, existence. That there's a part of that person's mind that cannot instinctually or emotionally connect to something in order to get a feeling or an emotion from that. It's like they're unplugged, let's say. So it's not to be necessarily judged as a final condition, but just simply that it exists, and it may be something that person needs to approach and deal with depending on their position in the world. I mean, it just, and what they claim to know and be up to. I mean, someone at a restaurant serving tables versus a congressman, the the risks are different there. Okay, just to be realistic about things. Expanding human meaning, unconscious people. So again, no one's unconscious. That's not possible unless you were knocked out unconscious. And still, even then, you're not unconscious because the body is still circulating blood, the heart is still beating, you wake up and you still remember your name. The only unconscious that I know of is a dead body. And that's no longer an identity. I mean, it's simply, in my way of looking at things, it is a record, a blank record, and or a record without a record player, let's say. But I would lean more towards a blank record. It has all the grooves in it, but the music is gone, in a sense. The practices of Buddhist Tibetan monks, they believe that the bones of the human body can be used to connect with the spirit that inhabited that body at some point in time. Maybe that's for a different YouTube video. And then I'm not so close-minded to think that on a quantum level, in the vast creativity of what we don't know about, that there might be something to that. I mean, definitely the body stores a lot of information, cellular memory, epigenetic influences, stories about people getting organ transplants and then psychological and emotional things changing about them. But it's speculative science at this point, which is kind of a contradiction into itself. Something's there, but it cannot be really dialed in just yet. So One last thing I wanted to talk about before I end the video is tenacity. I wrote something, and I think I'm going to read it, actually. So it was today, this morning. I'm only going to read a little bit of it and then save the rest for the next video. Because I just want to put it out there as a phenomenon. And a kind of an example of internal beings, elementals, let's call, or internal elements, okay, that are universal. And this is in relation to the Middle East and the Jewish folks that migrated from Europe after World War II to claim Palestine as Israel through colonizer bombings, genocide, mass exile, seizure of land, personal property, homes, and preemptive military strikes against their neighbors, just in case they happen to have a human reaction to the mass slaughter of innocent people and friends of theirs. So, friends of their neighbors, that is. So here's part of it. Something you'll never hear from mainstream media is that you cannot pretend tenacity. Something the ruling class of Israel simply cannot have. Time itself creates this in its peoples, wherever they may be. All sorts of timelines a geographical collection of cultures hold. Theirs, all sorts of timelines a geographical collection of cultures hold. And within that timeline, there's vibes you cannot imagine yourself into. You feel the connection intuitively. It prompts you. You do not knock on its door. Americans going into Iran, European Jews migrating to Palestine, these migrations can only present a pretense, a dull mask of belonging or right to administrate, to be there. So that's an intro to this piece I wrote that I'll do maybe my next video on, and that is the driving force of resistance and the fuel that the mind uses to endure and go beyond what is expected to happen from said invaders who don't have that tenacity because they're not connected to that land and the historical the collective historical memory of that place. And you know, I might be getting into a little bit of woo-woo ideas around human nature and what drives people and how the psyche or the mind is legitimately, or it legitimately has the right to tap into that history because on some level, genetically, it is connected to that. And that works for some reason. I don't know why. Like I have Scottish, English, and some Irish and Scandinavian history. And there's a connection there. Now, is it completely self-created, self-imagined? I can't say for 100% sure. All I can say is there's coincidental relationships in my life that point to that. And I'll get into that later too, what that means. I don't mean like today's version of those places. I mean more about the vibe of a place, its legends, myths, the artistic side, or the timeless aspects of those places. Vibe is a kind of a big word that has to be kind of framed and teased out and made more specific. And so I'll do that at another time. But yeah, that's pretty much it for now. I'm happy to get to the end of this extremely rare personality idea. You have a personality. Everyone is rare. You'll never see the same person twice in the same version that they were just 5 minutes ago. So do yourself a favor and have an open mind. Doubt your doubts in people. When you give people space to be more than you assume they are, you're also giving yourself space to be more than you are by uncoupling that judgment and being free of it. Because as soon as you judge others and use them as some sort of springboard, it's not really a springboard. You're jumping off a diving board with a collection of ball and chains around your ankles, which is sort of dangerous if you are doing that in a pool that's above your actual height. So be careful. And thank you for listening and supporting this channel.